Hi, you guys. This is Fatal Seduction, Season 1, Episode 5, Denial. Okay, so the show opens up. Nandi and Leo are celebrating Zen's birthday. And Brenda just pops in, "You stupid swine. Why haven't you been answering your phone?" And Nandy's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" She goes, "Benjamin Jabba killed himself today. It's all over the news." And she goes, "Oh my God." And Leo was like, "You go attend to Zen and I'll deal with Brenda." And he takes Brenda upstairs. So the scene shift, and we are at the college, and Nandi is sitting in her car, and she looks at the suitcase, and she pulls out the Java file, and she's going through it, and she's remembering the night before, well, her and Bayo were sitting in his office talking, like, what's this got to do with Jacob? I was like, this all has to do with Jacob. Jacob Tal, that could be a million names. And he's like, Nandy, don't be stupid. And then the scene shifts, and we see Zen walking, talking to Pokeboy, talking about don't be a tease, let's meet up later. And then Laura comes down the steps and bumps into Zen, and she drops her coffee, and then Zen gives it back to Laura. And then she said, "Can we talk? Can we talk?" And then Zen was like, "Laura, look, I panicked. I think you're amazing." And then Laura's like, "What?" And then Zen was like, "We're just best friends." And then nothing would come out of it. And then she's like, "What if it does?" And Zen was like, "I just rather be your friend." And then Laura was like, "Fuck me." And then Zen was like, "You're just being a little extra." And then Pokeboy texts Zen, says, "Hey, I've been ghosting. We'll chat later." And then but we already know Pokeboy. Oh, why does Jacob have Zen in his phone called ZZ Queen? Y'all. And she was, and then, what she say? Like the first time we meet up or something like that. Like it's just so crazy. This show's a trip. And then so the scene shifts, and like I said, uh, Jacob is in class texting Zen, and when he sees Nandi, he puts the what did they call that? Like a burner phone away, and takes out like his real phone because he's in the class with Nandi. And then this fool texts Nandi talking about last week was the best week of your life and you know it. And then Nandi just flipped her phone over and Jacob is getting pissed. Okay, so the scene shifts and we see Leo get out of his fancy car. And he goes into a bar where Bayo is, and he was like, "Can a family have free drinks?" And Bayo's like, he closes the Java file, and he was like, this place doesn't even suit your type of taste. This is not your type of world. And he goes and gets a glass from under the bar and pours himself something to drink. So he says, what's wrong with spending time with family? And then he tells Vio, oh, me and Nandy are going to go away for 6 months and we're going to go try for another baby. And Vio goes, is Nandy aware of this? And Leo goes, I can't convince her. And then Vio goes, Nandy doesn't want another baby. And Leo was like, so you're an expert on my woman now. And Vio was like, I don't need to be an expert. The miscarriage was effed up. The only way you convince her to have a kid is to swap out the birth control. And then he said that was a joke and started smiling. So the scene shifts, and now we're back at the college where Nandy and Jacob are. So Nandy is trying to leave, and Jacob wants to talk to her. And she tells Jacob that I need some space. So Jacob sees the case on her desk. And he is trying to open it. Mm-mm-mm. So the scene shifts back to Vio and Leo, and Vio was like, "Oh, I gotta go meet up Charlie." And then they're talking in their native language, and Leo goes, "Is it about Brenda?" And then Vio goes, "What about Brenda?" And Leo goes, "Oh, I thought the case was closed." And Vio goes, "Yeah." And then Vio was like, "Hey, are you hungry? Let me get you something to eat." You know. And then Leo goes, "Oh, you're full of crap." And then he tells Vio to travel with them. He said this investigation is nonsense. Spend time with your family. He goes, the two brothers, me and you. And then she's like, from growing up in this shithole to become citizens of the world. And then he said in his native language, I love this shithole. I just like Granny did. And Leo's like, oh shit. So the scene shifts and we're with Laura and Zen, and Laura brings this boy. I guess they call him rejection or what, I don't know. So she said, he consigned Pokeboy for you. All you have to do is just give him the cell phone number. And then Zen was like, how does this work? And she just said, trust me. So he hooks her phone up, types the number in, and he's like tries to zoom in on the map. And he was like, I hope you guys have time because it's going to take me some time to find this stalker because stalkers usually have burner phones that they turn off. And Zen was like, you know what? This is fine. I don't want to do this. And she goes, since you think Pokeboy is a gift to God, I think Pokeboy is a stalker. And then so the rejection guy, he just starts talking, and then Zen and Laura sit down. So the scene shifts, and we see Bayo walking into Charlie's office, and Charlie has like a stack of DVDs, and Bayo was like, "Oh, what are we doing? Playing DVD Jenga? And what is this?" And Charlie was like, well, you wanted the footage from Brenda's place. Here's the 48 hours that you wanted. Be careful with those. I just didn't bother to upgrade to digital. So I will put that back in that stack and don't mix them up if you want them in order. So Charlie's like, you're not taking this until you tell me why you opening up the Java case. And he was like, that info will cost you a cup of coffee and carry these damn DVDs as well. And Charlie was like, deal. Okay, so the scene shifts and Dandy arrives home, but she sees that there's no suitcase. So she rushes back to the college, and I guess the administrator is with her, and they're running, and she goes, are you sure that there was no class after mine? And she goes, no, there was no class. Or whatever, right? And so we see Jacob, and he has a thing. So he's thinking about Zen. And he writes Zen's birthday, 12/10/2000 and something. But that doesn't work when he tries to open it. And then he goes, oh, it's my mom's birthday tomorrow. Ah, I'm gonna get her a nice gift. When is your mom's birthday? And he was texting that to Sin. So the scene shifts, and Charlie and Bio went to the place where Bio and Leo was at earlier at the bar. So Leo, Bio goes behind the bar and makes him a drink. And Charlie was like, oh, that's a funny looking coffee. And Bio goes, oh, you want milk with that? And then Charlie goes, why are you really looking into the caves? And Bio goes, it's about Brenda. Brenda meant a lot to me. And I wonder why she killed herself. And looking into this Java case would tell me why. And he told Charlie, when I left the forest, Brenda had an initial statement, and then months later, she had a concrete statement. Where's the initial statement at? Charlie goes, why? It doesn't matter. The initial statement I need. And he goes, I wasn't there then. And then Vaya goes, how are you a lead detective on a case and you wasn't there? Yo, this guy, he's a trip. Okay, so they have a flashback of Charlie. Why does Charlie look older than he does now? Lord have mercy. And Brenda came into the police station to record her statement. And Charlie was asking her a list of questions. Where were you? What happened? Did you see Jabba do this? And Brenda was like, yeah, I was there. I went to the soccer field to have a smoke and I saw Benjamin Jabba with Bussy and he took her and Leo was like, are you willing to stand by your statement? And Brenda was like, yeah, I am. This man needs to pay and he gets what he deserves. So Charlie told Bio, you should remember Brenda as a hero. And then Bio goes, oh, tell Roxanne here are the copies of the file. And what's his name? Charlie said, okay, I can do that. And then um, and then Vayo was like, are you going to drink that? And Charlie was like, no, I got work to do. And then Charlie was heading towards the door, and Vayo was like, Charlie, like loud, like to where people were like looking over. And he goes, "Did you know what happened to Benjamin Jabba's family, like his son?" And Charlie just shakes and says no and walks right out the door. Okay, so the scene shifts and we see Leo standing, and Charlie texts Leo, Bio is looking into the Jabba case because of Brenda. And he was like, "So no case for worry because he gave me back the Jabba files." So the scene goes into a flashback, and Brenda's crying, and Leo was like, "Brenda, there's no need for crying. You did the right thing. He raped and killed a girl. It doesn't matter that you lied." And Brenda, she's like, "I'm having nightmares. The nightmares won't stop." So now he's hugging Brenda, and she was like, "I need you. I need you." And then Nandi comes in the door walking, and she's asking them, "Hey, what's wrong?" And then Brenda's like, "Everything's all right with Brenda." And Brenda's like, "I just need you," because she's just so tore up about what's going on. So the scene shifts and we see Dee going to Jacob's shop. And she's like, "Hello, hello." And she goes, so Jacob goes, "Hello." And she goes, "Oh, you must be Pokey Boy." And Jacob was like, "Who's Pokey Boy?" And she was like, "Just stop playing. You know what I'm talking about." And she goes, "No, last time I know, my name is Jacob." And so she went to go ring his phone. Girl, he turned his phone off so quick. And so when it was ringing, she saw his regular phone, not the burner phone. And she was like, "You know what? I'm so sorry. I met this guy online." And Jacob was like, "Isn't meeting strangers online dangerous?" And Zen is like, "We have a connection." And Jacob was like, "He must be a European prince." Then he asked you to send 100K. And then he asked her, "What are you?" And she goes, "A Sagittarius." And he was like, "Oh, I thought you was an Aries." And she was like, "Are you into star signs?" And he goes, "I'm a Virgo Gemini ascending, Sag moon." Jacob's too much. And um, he was like, "You should actually tell this Pokey Boy to send you a birthday present." So Jacob was like, "You should tell Pokey Boy to send you a gift. If he's a con, he won't send you a simple cent." And she was like, "Oh, I put fake birthdays on my accounts to throw people off." And then Jacob was like, "Well, when is your birthday?" And she goes, "December 20th." So she writes her number down and she leaves the shop. And then Jacob accesses the suitcase like that. And then he opens to see the Java file. And now he's having flashbacks of his father offing himself. Now the scene shifts and we see Bio with um, all these DVDs, and he's looking at one of them on the computer, and says 7/29/2023. Wow, that was a couple of days ago in the real world. And so he's just writing down, what car it was, who's in the house, because they're looking from an outside view. And now Leo is calling, and he was like, "Hey, brother, just checking in. Do you want to join with my family for dinner?" And Bio was like, "Hey, I'm tied up." And then he was like, "Hey, are you still asking Charlie about the Brenda case?" And then he was like, "Yeah, I met and chatted up with Charlie." And he said that, "Hey, brother, I am so serious about us traveling the world together." And Bio was like, "Hey, man, now I know you're sick." So the scene shifts, and he is taking like phone videos, like, "Hey, you keep ditching me." And then she's like, "No, I don't want that." And then she finally has the video she wants, and she's talking about, "Hey, I want to know if you're real, if you can meet me on campus B at 10 a.m. But if not, this is the final goodbye." So the scene fades into Leo still at the office going through DVD after DVD. And now he finally sees Jacob leaving and Nandy leaving, and he's writing it all down. So the scene shifts, and Leo and Nandy are in their living room. And he goes, "Baby, what I said at our anniversary, I really mean it." And Nandy was like, "Yes, man." And then she goes to say that, remember, she goes, "When I used to have this wine, it would hit the spot. Now it just goes right through me." And Leo's like, "Yeah. Remember when I wanted to pour some more wine in your glass?" He said, "No, Lenny, stop that. I'm pregnant." And he's like, "I'm so happy. Zen, Zen is gonna have a baby brother." And Nancy was like, "Yeah." And um, he was like, "Remember when we were kids? We were so happy. Can we go back to that?" And then there was a knock at the door. So the scene shifts back to Bio, and Bio is looking at the DVD still. And he says at 12 p.m. that Jacob returns. And he was like, "No, no, 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 no." So the scene shifts, and we're back at the Mahati home. So Jacob comes to the house and returns the suitcase. And he goes, "Oh, you left this at the university. Here you go." So Nandi is checking it. So as she's flipping through the pages to make sure all the pages are there, you see Vio's hand go rewinding the tape forward with the mouse. And then you just see Nandi's hands. And then we are at Vio, and Vio sees Jacob, with his trousers, doing something with his trousers. And he remembers she used a man's belt as a tourniquet. And now Vio is calling Nandi. So Nandi answers the phone, but she didn't say hello or nothing. And he goes, "Nandi, he killed her. Jacob killed her." And Jacob's standing right there, and he looks straight at Nandi. And Vio goes, "He murdered Brenda," but he was saying it in his native language. And then Nandi is looking at Jacob, and they're looking at each other. And then that's the end of the episode. I'll see you in the next one.